trio now.
That's right.
Triumvirate.
Lucy.
Triumvirate of power. All right,
Oh
cool.
my God. Perfect.
Okay,
Rob is
good.
Snorting.
Yeah, I'm snorting already.
My aim now is just to make you both snort as much as possible.
Okay, perfect.
Snorting.
That's all we need. Okay, well, we are recording. Welcome to episode 6 of the 12-Pound Podcast. I'm your co-host, Robert. I am here with my mom, Bobbie, and I want to remind everyone this is a podcast about life's changes and how we hope to help you face them through shared stories and experiences. Hey, Mom.
Hi, Rob.
Hi. Mom.
Rob?
Yes. I am very excited to introduce you and our audience to our first ever 12-Pound Podcast guest, Julie Keck. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Rob. Hi,
Hi,
Bobbie.
Julie.
So Julie is joining us from Chicago, where it is equally hot and humid. How are you doing there? Are you hanging in there?
I'm doing okay. I'm glad we're doing this podcast. It's distracting me a little bit. I feel nice and cool and calm.
Oh, good. Good. Take you out of that Chicago heat. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Julie. And just so everyone knows and gets to know you a little bit better, Julie is a filmmaker, writer, and business consultant whose career has focused on putting the power to tell stories into the hands of those who have been historically marginalized. She is currently a consulting producer for the storytelling arm of the global nonprofit Nia Taro, where she contributes to the Seedcast podcast, Theory Indigenous Media Makers Database, and the Reciprocity film series. She is also the co-founder of Breaking Light Studio, which works in partnership with Lily Wachowski to bridge intersectional writers and directors to careers in the film and television industry. That is awesome, Julie. It sounds like you've got a really interesting and exciting career, and it makes our conversation around the kitchen table seem that much more exciting.
Makes us seem a little
thank
more
you.
important.
A little bit. You're definitely raising the importance of
Raising
this
the bar.
podcast.
Well, I'm glad to play my part.
Well, good. Well, thank you again for joining us. So before we get into today's episode, Mom, I have a question for you.
Yes.
I just got home from a road trip to Virginia. I was actually in Virginia and West Virginia. I was going through Shenandoah and through the George Washington National Forest. And while I was traveling, I checked into a lodge in Shenandoah National Park. And as I was checking in, I booked my cabin, and I was very excited because it was the first time I'd gotten away by myself in a long time. I've got 2 daughters, as you know, and our audience has come to know. And it was the first time in a while I was without both of them. So I had a chance to get away. So I'm on this road trip, and I'm checking into the lodge. And when I'm checking in, I turn around, and there's this nice couple behind me. And the woman asked me, she goes, "Oh, are you traveling alone?" And I said, "Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm traveling alone. I'm just doing a road trip." And she said, "You must be so lonely." I said, "Oh my God, I guess I am lonely. Like, what am I doing?" So I was thinking to myself as I stepped away from that conversation, I could not let go of whether I was looked at as this lonely drifter who was roaming through the foothills, and I couldn't stop thinking about it for a while. And all I was thinking to myself and you in this podcast is, when did you stop giving a shit about what other people think?
Well, I thought Virginia was for lovers.
Oh, apparently it's for losers.
Yeah, sounds like it's for losers.
Oh my God.
apparently this person really was concerned about the fact that I was on this road trip alone. And then after she said it, I couldn't stop thinking about the fact that I am now alone
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
mountains.
you let that get to you, huh?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. Yeah, when did you stop caring about what others had to say about you?
You know, I don't think I've ever completely stopped caring. I mean, that would be pretty good. But basically, you know, with age, definitely with age, you get a little experience, and unfortunately, I guess a little hardened to. You start to realize it's not about you.
So is there a date?
Categorize.
Do you have
There's a date.
do you have a
Wait,
calendar?
let me get my calendar.
Because if there's a date, I'm
There's
going
a
to mark
date.
it on my iPhone so I get a
Right.
reminder.
Yeah, you start to just say, you know, you start to stop the thought and say, this woman has just made you a lonely man. She's standing behind you in line. She has no idea who you are or what you're about. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of ridiculous to like hold on to something that somebody says about you that doesn't even know you. I guess where it has a little bit more of a holding power is when it's someone near and dear to you, and there's some, you know, then you do care a little bit more. But basically, you can't let that stuff get you. And I do think it's age. I think you learn a lot of, you know, you can just sort of brush things off and let them go, and sort of see the humor in it. I mean, what's that about? She thinks you're lonely. What'd you have on? It's like,
I mean, it looked like I was
were you
ready.
crying?
Not right then.
Yeah.
But no, now I don't know what it was, but it made me think about this episode because we
Yeah.
knew we were going to be talking about labels and what people may or may not think of you, what you may or may not think of yourself as it relates to the world you're operating in. And that's one of the reasons we were so excited to have Julie join us. She works closely with people who are putting their stories in their own hands, who they are in their own hands. That was one of the reasons we were really excited, Julie, to have you join, because I think it's something that we talk about a lot. And as this episode progresses, you and Mom are going to be sharing your stories, and I'm lucky to have the opportunity to sit here and listen.
I was just going to say my ride's here.
Julie's ride is there.
Sorry.
Actually, I think
yeah.
just a quick update to our audience. Julie just got her ramen delivered. That's her delivery truck.
Right. Grubhub.
These are the beautiful sounds of Chicago.
I know. I loved it. It was perfect.
It's perfect.
It's great.
Authentic background noise here.
And that is leading right into what we wanted to talk about today, labels. Whether a label, a category is fine with you, not fine with you, that's something that you should choose. So, and that woman, interestingly enough, instantly gave you a label. Yeah, that's what we're going to get into. And hopefully I can tell you a little bit about my story and Julie can tell you a little bit about hers.
Well, before we get started, we want to thank our sponsor, Maury's Piers. Maury's Piers, located on the boardwalk in Wildwood, New Jersey, is a classic seaside amusement park, family-owned and operated since the late 60s. If you haven't been to Maury's Piers and you're feeling a little alone, what are you waiting for? Visit them at Surfside Pier, featuring the Ocean Oasis Water Park and Beach Club at 25th Avenue, Mariners Landing Pier, featuring Raging Waters Water Park at Scavenger Avenue, and Adventure Pier at Spencer Avenue.
I guess I could probably open this up to, we were going to title this episode Buy Now, Gay Later, and kind of changed, when we were talking about it. It in itself is a label, is putting something on somebody that might not necessarily be true. And I, really relate to that. It's been quite a while ago, but after my marriage, long-term marriage to a male, ended. I was with a woman for a fairly long-term relationship, which ended. And a gay male friend of mine, good friend of mine, wanted to cheer me up and invited me over to Rehoboth. And he was already thinking about fixing me up, which is how this came about. And that's when I said to him, Nick, I don't really think I'm a lesbian. And his comment to that was, well, buy now, gay later, which I thought was, at the time, just a play on words, and I found it humorous. I really didn't go any deeper than that. Got back to Jersey, and I was thinking about it, and it was interesting because I thought what he was saying was, to me, when I thought about it, was that I'm in denial about who I am, rather than sort of a little confused and figuring out what it was that, not that I was going to label myself, but, my feelings. So although it was a funny title because it was a play on words, it's somebody making judgment, sort of a screaming generalization about who you are because you had a relationship with a woman, then that's the deal. That's who you are. And then I thought about it a little more and I thought, well, sometimes those statements come from where Nick is coming from, meaning maybe he's been around a lot of gay males that were in heterosexual relationships and then ended up with a man. He's relating to his life, his group of, his network, and has nothing to do with me. So anyway, that's kind of where that title was going to be and what it was about. And, speaking for myself, I'm not, after all these years, I still don't categorize myself as a lesbian or bisexual. I'm just Bobbie. And Bobbie just is with the person that she wants to be with. And that's okay. It's okay that way. And it would be okay if I were a lesbian. It's all okay. It's what, it's about me. It wasn't about Nick. It's about me. And I know, Julie, you have different story, your story. So what would you say as far as we're talking about being put into a category? Was that something that you are familiar with?
Sure. You mean as a storyteller? I'm just kidding. That's not
right.
How did I come out as a storyteller? It's
Come
very
out, right.
difficult. I find it very difficult to say, and like I really have to check out people before I share that. Yeah, so this was not in my bio. I am a queer woman. I'm a queer cis woman. I'm white. I have settler heritage, German, Swiss, and French. I grew up in the Midwest in Southern Illinois. Have lived in Chicago for over 20 years. And I mean, within all that, so I just shared just like these are my identities, like this is who I am. And already, whenever we introduce ourselves, and especially if you share things like that, people start to like put together a picture of what you are, not even just like what they're seeing, but like what all those identities add up to. And they think they know something about you. I don't know if what I just shared are labels, but based on what they think they know about you. And I even was thinking about that during the story you told, Rob. That woman just saw you in this one moment in time, just saw that you were standing in a place alone and decided like, oh my God, he's going through this major tragedy, that that you're lonely. Like it's a fact that you might have been standing there alone and by yourself. Lonely is a whole different thing. Lonely is like, what's going on in your soul? What harm has come to you? And like, are you okay?
I agree. It was a big jump.
It's wild. It's
yeah.
really wild. But yeah, so I mean, for me with labels and being a queer woman, you were talking a little bit earlier about that question, when did you stop caring what people think? And so I'm in my late 40s and I try to like be very independent. I don't care what anyone thinks, but I'm also human. Like I'm living in the world with other humans.
Exactly.
And people who I care about, and then also wanting to be liked and wanting to be respected and wanting to not be harmed. And so in terms of what I share about myself with, like I'm actually pretty out. I don't share all the details of my life. I happen to be married. I'm married to someone who I've been with for 23 years. They are non-binary, and that's been a journey. When we met, they identified as a woman, and I think now even in their 40s, they're sort of coming into the language that best describes them. But even, living in a relationship with someone that other people would identify as a woman, they're like, oh, well, then you're a lesbian, right? Because I happen to be a queer woman who's with someone who people identify as female. And that also erases who I actually am. Like I consider myself, I say queer on purpose. I actually have a wide range of people that I'm attracted to, maybe in the current lingo used by the kids, like they might say pan. I don't know. I just know, kind of like you, Bobbie, I just have always been attracted to and loved who I loved.
Yeah.
The only commonality across the people that I have like cared about and been attracted to in that way is that they're all people I consider very, very smart. So if there's a word for, like always go after the smartest person in the room, that's my sexuality. But
That's good. We have to get a word.
yeah, I can't say that I totally have let go of wanting people, like caring what people think. And even that conversation kind of took me back to like my early 20s when I was sort of realizing that I wasn't straight. And this is in the 90s. This is in the mid to late 90s. And coming out to my parents felt huge. And I was pretty safe. Like I knew my parents loved me. I knew my parents wouldn't reject me as a person. I knew I wouldn't be homeless. I wouldn't be disowned. I wasn't worried about that. But there was something about, I knew that as soon as I said the words, it would be more real because someone would know besides myself. And I also felt they would look at me differently. Even if they still loved me, I was now a different person. As a kid coming out to her parents, I don't know. I just knew that they were going to have to readjust what they thought about me and my life. What my life would look like in the future. And I'll say the only thing that my parents ever expressed that seemed, I mean, they always have been accepting, but they did talk about worrying for me, like I'm worried that your life is going to be hard, and I'm worried that you're going to be hurt, or I'm worried that people are going to hurt you. And that was real to me. Those are some of my thoughts around that.
I like that because that's what parents do. I'm looking at someone right now as I say that. They, you do worry, because you
Yeah.
want their life to be easy. And although times have changed, things have gotten better. It's still a concern because it's, it sort of can be off there by yourself. And it's also different for them. I'm sure, maybe, not sure, maybe they had a feeling it will be different for them as far as possibly back in the day, that like grandchildren. I remember talking to people my age, and parents felt, well, there'll be no grandchildren there. And all that's
Right.
changed. All of that has so changed. So, there's marriage, there's families now, there's, so it's really different. As I said, as far as coming out, I don't know that I can say that I did that, but I did have a conversation on the beach with you, Rob. If you remember, you were, I think, about a freshman in high school, because my partner had decided to move down and live with us. Actually, she was there. She was living with, and I thought, maybe I should say something. It's terrible, but maybe I should, yeah. So we were walking along the beach, and I said to you, Rob, tell me if you remember this. I said, Rob is, living here, and he stopped me and said, Mom, I know. Yeah, I know. You don't have sort of that look of, I know all this. You don't have to continue. To which I stopped abruptly, giving myself a, that was good. That was easy. And
Parent of the year.
Did you hear that? It's a good thing Julie's on here.
I caught that.
I know. He's not even, you know what I mean? Just throws that out there. He just throws that out there. But yeah, I was, I guess, in maybe late 30s. And I thought that, and I really did. It wasn't like, oh, I'm escaping this, obviously, because I started it. But to me, it was just like he knows. I was really, to be thinking about it clearly, thinking what I would do. I was like, you were me. And it would be like, yeah, okay, yeah, that's enough. I don't need to hear anymore. Right. And I would probably mean that. Like, I get it. You think I'm stupid? Kind of thing. Okay. But that was the end of the conversation. And I was telling Rob, Julie, that years later, I thought if I had that to do over again, if I had a do-over, I would have asked him a few more questions. I would have dug just a little deeper. And just because it's a big deal. It's a big deal. He's a freshman in high school, a boy. Probably a lot more to it than I knew.
Yeah, and I think for me, I did know it. And I had known it before that conversation. I definitely reacted partly as someone would, as if a parent was trying to give the birds and the bees talk. It was like, oh my God,
no.
Please don't talk about this, because what this really means is you're talking about sex and who you're living with.
There you go.
And you're my mom. So let's not go there. But that said, I did have a sense and understanding of what was going on. I think the big difference was the time and where you are, not just in your life at your age, but where you are, living, the community that you're in. Is it something that is familiar? Do I have friends who have parents who live with people of the same sex? I think at that point the answer was no. So I was the only person I knew. I didn't know if you'd spoken to my brother, to Doug, about it. So I didn't know if I should broach it with Doug. And if that was something we should talk about. And then you just were always thinking, well, what if I'm asked? What do you say? And I think this is where we talked about this. You always saw yourself as you. Bobbie's Bobbie. It's kind of how we ended up kind of labeling this episode, which is it's Bobbie's Bobbie, Julie is Julie, and, Rob is Rob. That's what's important. But, at that time, I wouldn't have known how to talk about it. It just wasn't as prevalent in the world, in terms of open dialogue.
Sure. And your age. I mean, 14 years old. It's, as I said, you don't have a lot of experience.
Well, give me some credit.
And now I'm giving you. Maybe later.
That wasn't
Maybe
that
later.
naive. I mean,
all of this, I give you too credit for talking about this, not just even on this episode, but I'm putting on you that I think you've had these other conversations around this. But in general, like, kids don't want to talk with their parents about anything around sex. But what's tricky here is that our sexual orientation, although sex is a part of it. It's so much more than that. But I think, you know, and I was talking about coming out to my parents, one of the things is admitting that you're gay is a little bit admitting, people start to think about the kind of sex you might have. And that feels very, not only limiting, but exposing.
It's interesting, Julie. That's so funny. I was just thinking that when you said that, because people place such a, you know, it does go to sex. It's like, you know, who you're being intimate with. And it is so much more than that. It really is. So, I mean, I'm sure maybe to some people it's not. Let's get real. Maybe it's not. But
well, I mean, different encounters, different times. But yeah, like what is still the majority of how we spend our life? I cleaned my house this morning. Like my partner and I cleaned our house. We talked about what we were going to have for dinner, you know?
Yeah.
And I think, you know, gay people are sexualized in a way that we are sexualized, and it doesn't always allow us to be our full self. Like going all the way back to like, oh, you know, you're standing there alone, you're lonely. They think those people thought they knew something about you, Rob. And people think they know something about me when I say that I'm queer. And it's a way that I live in the life, but we all have so many layers to us.
And it seems it has a lot. Tell me what you guys think, but it's, you know, it's differences, different people tend to have a problem with different, the exposure. You know, coming from this little town, I remember being in Philadelphia. We would go to Philadelphia to the dentist and the eye doctor from here because there was nothing going on here. And I remember seeing two women, and it wasn't a mother and daughter because I was kind of young and would hold my mom's hand and walk through Philadelphia. And I saw two women holding hands and kind of looking like more than just friends or something. I just remember it. And I remember pointing it out to my mother and going, look at these two women, or like, not pointing out like they're gay or they didn't know anything about that. But it was different. You know, it was different when you come from, when Robert was saying he didn't know what people would ask or what. I had no gay friends, none. All my friends are heterosexual. So I'm sure there was a community somewhere, you know, where I lived, but I was totally unaware of it. So, you know, that exposure, when you're not exposed to something and then all of a sudden it's just so different to you. Now, I don't know what this woman was exposed to, Robert, that thinks you're lonely. It's interesting, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's bothering me now. It's going to bother me for days. I'm like, what is she thinking that she looks at this guy and just assumes that he's lonely, where someone else
You're
might.
Exactly right.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I think it's the same. You know, it's when you see somebody eating alone at a restaurant or you see someone alone at the movie theater. Some people just like to do those things
love
alone.
The movies alone. Love it.
They just love it. Other people, you know, and there's lots of reasons for that. Some people like to cry alone.
I don't want anybody eating my popcorn.
You don't want people eating your popcorn.
Don't touch my popcorn.
But yeah, no, I don't know what she saw. But you know, the funny thing is, what the worst thing was I was a little alone. I was a little lonely. So all of a sudden she hits a nerve.
A little trigger.
You know, because you know I was a married person for a long time, and now I'm a single person. And you know, you're kind of I'm reorienting to that life, and I go through these moments, especially when my kids aren't around.
Interesting.
Of feeling really lonely, and probably the loneliest I've ever felt. You know, I can really start to think about. I just can't imagine life without my kids. And then when you're without your kids, you're like, oh, I really wish they were here. You know, and then you know someone says, well, you look like really alone.
Julie, you have to see the face here. You're in Chicago. You have to see this face.
I'm just like alone. I was like, I'm independent.
Yeah, how dare you?
Yeah, I'm an adventurer. But
look at my backpack.
Look at my backpack. I am ready to roll into these woods.
That's so funny, but
that's right.
People just assume stuff. They just assume.
It makes me wonder, like, what could she, even if she had seen you and she kind of clocks, oh, he looks like maybe he's a little sad, like, or something. I don't know what she saw, but like, was there something else she could have said that wouldn't have felt so bad? You know, hey, are you on an adventure by yourself? You know, hey, what's your story? I mean, saying lonely it's so.
That's the first thing,
right?
Really. The first thing you say to somebody.
Basically, she just said, "Is your life really sad?"
Yeah, because you look really. Yeah. No, you know, it's
My
really,
God.
it's funny too that you say that.
She could have
because-
invited me to dinner.
Well, my first question to you
That's
was
right.
what was my first question to you? How old was she? I thought she was trying to pick you up. Yeah, but this happens all the time. And you know, it's funny. This was just a verb, like something that was heard. Can you imagine all the little toads that come out that aren't heard? You know, what people say as they're judging and putting people in their little whatever, wherever they're putting them, probably all day long. I always said if they're, you know, comic strips, if, you know, the little cloud over your head. God, aren't you glad we don't see that? I mean, it would be terrible what people are, you know, what little box they're putting you in. And, you know, it's really beneficial to get over doing that, because it doesn't, the person that is being assumed something about, they'll learn to walk that stuff off. I'm more concerned about the person that puts somebody in a box.
But I do think that's a good question, Julie. You know, what could someone say? Because it's not the only time. I mean, I happen to be traveling, but, you know, I think there are a lot of instances where you do know someone who's going through something and you don't know what to ask them. I mean, even if this person obviously didn't know me at all, but, you know, let's repurpose, you know, the situation where someone who actually hadn't seen me in a while and didn't know that I was single, and didn't know that my kids weren't with me or that I even had kids. So, you know, how do you talk to somebody about being different than you were before? And maybe this ties into the conversation about bulls. Like when you do have that conversation with your parents, you know, what did the parents say? You said you could have asked maybe some more questions of me. I could have asked more questions as well. You know, and as I got older, I probably avoided it more and more. I created distance from it. I always knew it, and I always accepted you. And I wonder what else you could say, what else you could ask, especially when you're not with somebody. You know, Julie, I know you've been in a long-term relationship, but I'm just thinking as I'm talking to my mom about that, it's kind of the in-betweens when you really want to talk about it. How are you thinking? How are you feeling? How are you doing? You know, do you want to date again?
Yeah.
If
well,
so, who are you going to go for?
that
He
I-
looks good. Is that right? She looks good. Okay. They look good. I don't know.
I don't think, you know, it's funny. I don't think we ever would have. I have to say that probably as your mom may have been an uncomfortable conversation to talk to you about dating. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of like, I don't know.
You talk to me about everything else.
Well, that's now. This is it's kind of, you know what I'm saying, Julie? You get that at all? It's kind of a different.
I think it's called oversharing.
Yeah, it's kind of was a little bit different back then. I think it's really evolved and changed a lot now. And once you have conversations like that, it just, you know, not sharing, you know, I'm actually, believe it or not, it sounds like I'm not, but I'm actually an extremely private person. And so, but I don't have any trouble at my age sharing things that are just me. I mean, there's nothing, you know, I'm not embarrassed about it. I'm not, it's just who I am. And actually, Robert has convinced me that people are interested in who I am. So it's like, okay, all right. I don't know why, but I'll tell you who I am.
It's what the research is telling
The
us.
research has shown. The research
I
is
remember Bobbie, I remember Rob talking about you to me when we met up in Chicago, maybe, and Rob and I met up just to talk about my experience in school in the fall of 2019. And he mentioned you. And actually the way Rob described you, I was really curious. I was like, oh, that's so interesting, you know, a life coach, and that's exciting. So I'm happy that then these few years later that I finally get to meet you. So you actually are famous.
I'm famous?
Some people,
Wow.
just so you know.
Well, let me tell you what else is famous. Maury's Piers in Wildwood, New Jersey.
It's a good one.
This is why
He has these segues.
I've got
They're
these
like
pearls.
So he does.
Julie,
Yeah, you're so good at
Julie,
that.
have you ever been to Wildwood, New Jersey?
No, I have not. Oh, no, but there's an amazing movie called Wildwood, New Jersey by a friend of mine named Ruth Lightman. That's amazing.
About this actual
Yeah.
Wildwood, New Jersey.
Could you
really?
send us the link and we'll put it up on
I believe so.
Please
Absolutely.
do.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's one of the best documentaries I've ever seen.
Oh.
But I do want to hear about this water park because I'm hot over here.
I do. Well, before, so what's your favorite ride on the boardwalk or on any carnival like experience? Do you have a favorite ride?
Oh gosh. No, probably just like the carousel.
Okay,
Something
that's
like
sweet
that.
though.
Sweet.
The
To
old
hear him,
music.
you know, he's going, oh, that's sweet.
I could
Like,
see Julie on the
Right.
carousel. Yeah,
that's sweet.
That's
Julie
what I heard
going
too.
up and
Did you hear it,
down.
Julie? Yeah, that's sweet, you chicken.
Well, I'm just going to
with
get
you
right
on
into I'll just get right into the ad then, since she's on the
Yeah, go ahead.
carousel. While,
Yeah,
while
go ahead.
she's taking a nap on the carousel, we'll be at the water park. Thanks to Maury's Piers. Maury's Piers, located on the boardwalk in Wildwood, New Jersey, is a classic seaside amusement park, family owned and operated since the 1960s. If you haven't been to Maury's Piers, please get up there. It is already August and the summer is coming to a close. Visit them at Surfside Pier, featuring the Ocean Oasis Water Park and Beach Club at 25th Avenue, Mariners Landing Pier, featuring Raging Waters Water Park at Skellinger Avenue, and Adventure Pier at Spencer Avenue in Wildwood. Yeah, please send us that. This is a funny area. It's eclectic because it's a tourist town, but it's a different type of tourist town because its roots are actually really as an entertainment town. There used to be a lot of live music that came through Wildwood as a result of its relationship with Philadelphia and Atlantic City. So it's always kind of been a party town. And then it migrated from its party days to more of a family atmosphere, and but it still has its roots in having a good time. So
Sure does.
I'd be curious to
That's
see
amazing.
I'd be curious to see how your friend portrayed us.
Yes, absolutely. I just sent you a link, Robert. So yeah, I want to hear that too. I have a still from this documentary framed in my home. That's how much I love this documentary.
Oh,
So
okay.
I
Wow.
can't wait to see the
Oh,
overlap.
take a
here.
picture of that too and text it to
Oh,
us.
I can't
We'll-
wait to see that.
You
That's
got
really
it.
great.
We'll
You got
share
it.
Yeah, it's a funny place. I used to be. Talking about like difficult things to talk about. It was a lot easier to talk about where you're from, but Wildwood is, it's honky tonk. It's a carnival town. So when I left Wildwood, and people would ask me where I was from, I would be a little bit gun shy to say Wildwood because it was a little carnival.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm just hearing this for the first
Yeah,
time.
I would just, it's like as an 18-year-old, you just wanted to get away. And, I just was like, I don't want to tell people where I'm from. I want to start over.
And you didn't want people to make assumptions about you based
Yeah.
on their opinions about Wildwood.
That's
Interesting.
exactly
Rob.
right.
Isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and at some point early on in my career, somebody, a mentor advised me to just, whatever you do in meetings with clients or colleagues, is to just be yourself. Be yourself. Say exactly who you are, where you're from, and what you're about. And it's more, authentic than it is, giving you the generic. So the first time I did that, I was on a sales call, and I was in Washington, D.C., and I was meeting with this gentleman who was responsible for this pension fund. And he asked me where I was from. And, it was the first time I said, well, I'm from Wildwood, New Jersey. And he goes, no, you're kidding. I said, no. I said, I'm from Wildwood. And he said, where in Wildwood? I said, well, actually, I'm from Wildwood Crest. He goes, what street did you grow up on? And I said, oh, Columbine Road. He goes, I grew up on Columbine Road. I said, no, you didn't.
Oh my
He goes, yeah. In the summers, I was down by the bay. I said, oh, my family was closer to the ocean. And, he was much older than me. So he had very different stories, and he had more of the party days, and I had more of the family days. But he had a lot of great memories, and, it built up an instant connection. And I stayed friendly with him until he retired. And then after that, I was dropping Wildwood everywhere. I couldn't stop talking about Wildwood. I was basically the national spokesman for Wildwood, New Jersey. But yeah, no, I guess I was a little concerned about, what people would think because,
Sure.
It's, it was a.
But you have to be who you are, and it's the same thing with what we're talking about. If
That's right.
if you're going to not tell somebody a pretty big part of your life, then what kind of relationship is that going to be? It isn't going to be one at all because you don't know who I am. So and I think what, isn't there a saying, if somebody tells you who they are, believe them. Believe them.
Yes.
Believe them. Why am I? No, you're not. I've had that. Oh, that's a great story. I worked for quite a long time, actually, in real estate, and this handsome Irish older gentleman who I really liked. And he was flirty, which was kind of fun. And I was in a relationship, And one of the other women, I guess they were talking something about me or something, because she told me later on, and she said something about Bobbie's partner, and it was a female name, and he goes, "What do you mean her partner?" And he said, "Well, she's with a woman," and he goes, "She is not, right?" And he goes, "Yeah, she is." No, that's impossible. And it was funny. I thought about it. The reason it would be impossible to him is because I think it was threatening because he was flirty all the time. And it was like, wait a minute, I'm flirting with someone who likes women? That somehow didn't fly, right? Anyway, it was funny because the flirting was over, and he was, it was interesting.
So it was how it affected him.
Absolutely. Isn't it always?
Yeah.
Well, no, it does affect other people. That's why I'm saying you can't take that too seriously, because that's not somewhere you're supposed to be anyway. It's when somebody has, and then things change. I think that's important to know, that some people might get some news that's very surprising to them. Like, really? That's just a surprise. There's nothing wrong with that reaction. I didn't know. And maybe they need some time to process and to digest that. I'm sure your parents did. My father was deceased, and my mother was not doing well either. So it was not like I had a parent thing to go through particularly. But you need time to process. That's something that comes as quite a surprise to you, and a lot of times people process it quite well, and it becomes it's perfectly fine. Give them a chance. There's some people you should just give them a chance. Don't let them process. Sometimes it's worth it.
That sounds very mature, Bobbie.
I'm old, Julie. I'm old.
It's not.
I'm talking to these 40-year-old punks here, right? I'm old.
Again, I still want to know when this date happens.
Oh, the date? Oh,
Yeah.
you're talking. I thought I had a date. Did you see me? I went, what date? Somewhere in I would think in my late 40s. Business. I think a lot of had to do with being in a business where you get a little bit tougher, I hear you agreeing. Are you agreeing with me, Julie? That
I am agreeing with you.
Yeah.
I'm a woman in my late 40s, and I feel the most myself I've ever felt, and I will say I do worry so much less about what other people think, and I do think it's age.
Yeah, it definitely is. And experiences, and you have to put out fires, you have to do things, you have to talk to all kinds of people. People say they can say such silly, ridiculous things, and it's okay. And you can decide, who you want to be with, where you want to be, and gosh, it all seems to work out. When I didn't give a shit what people thought, boy, did I. I remember in my I guess probably my 20s, my best friend in the world is maybe 9-10 years older than I am, and we've been friends for 50 years. And I remember having a friend. Everyone should have a friend like that. Everyone should have a friend like that. And I remember saying to her, because I was nervous to return packages to a store. I didn't know what to say. Like, what are they going to ask me? I'm like, how ridiculous. I look at that and I think, and it's true, I really was. And, so today, can I return a package? Oh, what are you kidding? Not only can I return it.
You can complain the whole way there.
No, I know. Not really, but I can, tell when they say, is there anything wrong with it? You bet there was. No. But, So, things change, and they... situations change, people change, how people identify themselves change. I might not always be famous.
You'll always be famous. You'll always be infamous.
It was funny.
As a question for both of you, as you both came into, this point in your life where you're worrying less and you're thinking less about what people think, did that circle around you change? Did you find that you were with people or friends with people who maybe weren't as supportive as you were kind of coming into yourself more and more?
No, but my circle of friends did change for another reason. It had nothing to do with my sexuality. But I've been sober for 25 years. I had to change my circle, unfortunately. They were fun. But there were some people that, yeah, it just didn't work out anymore. No, my friends pretty much remained my, my circle of friends, and added people to them. When I did start meeting, more gay and bisexual people identified whatever they identified as, but not heterosexual. That started to grow a little bit. I like such a mix. I come from an area where it's such a mix of people and incomes and what people do, and that's kind of my circle of friends as well. So, but no, it didn't change because of that. I just banged the table. I just banged the table, Julie, and he's giving me one of those stop. So you know what I do, right? I just bang it more.
You're gonna do it again.
You can't. He's telling me what to do.
I have a table by me. I would do it. With
Bang
you.
your table.
I have to pad this room. We're a small operation out here in Wildwood, Julie. So the production value drops when she starts banging the table.
I can't wait for my next episode on the podcast to get flown out to Wildwood, New Jersey.
We cannot wait to fly you out.
We'll fly you out.
We cannot wait. How about yourself, Julie? Just as
same question.
Yeah, same question. Just as times change, as you change, and where that's the kind of the underlying mission of this podcast and our company is talking about change and shared experience, and this as well, helping people who don't have platforms get there. As your own changes kind of came, did that world change for you? Did that circle change for you?
I do think I have gone through lots of periods of change in my life, and for different reasons. I mean, in my early 20s, it was sort of coming into my sexuality, but I've just gone through I went to business school after being a filmmaker for many years, for 15 or 20 years, and being in more creative realms. Then I went to business school, and I knew why I was going to business school. I wanted to help people tell their stories in a really effective way, and I knew in order to be a champion for them, I was going to have to increase my improve my toolbox, basically. And that's exactly what I did. But going through all that kind of change, talking about people who think they already know everything about you, people were like, what are you doing? And then people in my life who were like, MBA, gross, like only jerks get MBAs, And so that was really interesting. But going through all of this and just any of the changes in my life, I mean, as I get older, my circle of friends is stronger because I no longer, I think for two reasons. One, I don't feel like I have to just keep friends and be close to people just because we've been close in the past. And I've come to understand that all relationships actually have hills and valleys, or that some relationships and friendships might be more temporary. And that can be really hard to consider. I mean, we live in a culture where if you just look at romantic relationships, if you break up or you get divorced, well, that's it. This person is the worst. And I never understood that part. Wait a minute, you loved them 5 minutes ago, but today they're the worst. When did that happen? And for me, it happens a lot with friendships too. I consider you, Bobbie, my best friend in this moment. I knew it was gonna happen 3 years ago, and then here we are.
Oh my God, Julie, she's gonna be talking about this all day.
And then and then we might need a little space, and then we'll come back together. And I think it's not. I don't interpret those pauses or spaces in friendships as harmful anymore. And I keep. The friends I keep closest are the ones who allow me that room and space to grow. Those friends that, there might be periods of time where we're texting or talking every day, and then if we're both busy and you have 3 weeks or 3 months or 3 years where we just get busy but then come back together, and you come back together and they say, oh my God, I missed you, and oh, I have so many stories for you, or I have so many questions for you. And instead of getting, well, where have you been? And, what happened? And I'm not to say there aren't things that need to be discussed a little more, but I feel like my instincts around who I spend my time with, I trust them more. I think I trust my instincts about what I do more in general. And that might just I think that gives me a sense of well-being.
I was getting a sense of well-being just listening to it because it's so true. And it is with age, and that's who, you find that circle of friends. Sometimes it's not you. It doesn't have to be huge, It doesn't have to be huge. I always call it, isn't it wonderful, people like that? I always call them a safe place to fall. It's always a safe place to fall, if you have to fall. And that you're there for them, they're there for you, and they don't judge you. They don't judge you. It's not about listening to you because how it relates to them, so, that's great. And to get to that place sounds relaxing, it's so much more relaxing, than being around people that, I don't know, that just kind of pull you, push and pull. Don't push and pull me.
Well, she's a carousel girl.
So that's good.
right.
That's really good, Rob.
That's right.
Is that good? No, I like that. That was she's a cat.
I always.
In case
I
you're
always
wondering
come
what that is,
back
Julie, I'm
around.
sorry, I was snoring. Every time he says carousel,
no.
I snore.
Can you re-edit this to put in the highest roller coaster, Rob? Because
Yes.
I don't want to whip.
I will. So when you next see Julie on the 12 Pound Podcast, she will be on the Sea Serpent roller coaster. It is an upside-down roller coaster that you can't miss on Maurice Piers, located on the boardwalk in Wildwood, New Jersey, which will be Julie's first stop here when we fly her in. Economy. It'll still be economy.
Hey,
Coach.
I'll take it.
We might ask you to use your miles. If we do, we promise we'll
wait.
get you some curly fries and
Oh my God.
and some Core
I'm
Brothers
in.
ice cream. Good. And we'll take you up to the boardwalk and you'll have an
I will be on
opportunity.
location.
I think so. Well, it's that's funny, and thank you for that segue as well. We actually record up on the boardwalk our video content in addition to what we do here audio wise on the podcast. And that's a lot of fun because we get an opportunity to kind of take some of these conversations that we have and seriously lighten them up and talk to tourists and visitors to the Wildwoods, which again is very eclectic and unique in all of the people and personalities that we get to meet up on the boardwalk. So we get to have a lot of fun up there. So you absolutely can help us talk to those folks.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun up there.
That sounds great. I'm in.
Julie, thank you so much.
Thank you. This is really fun.
Yeah, the hour went by faster than we
Wow.
thought. We met at the University of Vermont, and I never forgot you. So when we had an opportunity to talk about, life's changes and how people address them, I just remember the great conversations that we had. So thank you so much for having another one with us.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Congrats on the podcast, and I can't wait to come back.
Don't forget to check us out on the 12poundpodcast.com. The podcast can be found on any of your favorite podcast platforms. And we are also up on the boardwalk every week. Those videos can be found on our YouTube page. So again, please check us out. If you like what you see, like, follow, share, and let us know as well. As we have told you in the past, Mom is a life coach, and she spends a lot of time working with people on change and the challenges that they may be going through. So you can also see her information on our website, again, at www.12poundpodcast.com. And with that, Julie, we will say goodbye, and I will text you a lovely thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, Julie.
Lucy of the Margate Sands, made of dreams and old tin cans. She's no diamond fellas, but she shines the same. With skin just like an alley buck, there's no getting through to her. She loves everyone, don't matter whence they came. And if she were but not so grand, and I could set her in a ring, I would put her on your finger. And when I took your hand, I'd sing la-di-da-di-da. I'd sing la-di-da-di-da. Well, it ain't much, I know, but we can take her with us anywhere we go. With Lucy.